Support for the Faith Middleton Food Schmooze made possible by Big Y World-Class Market, serving New England families with more than 62 locations throughout Connecticut and Massachusetts, celebrating 80 years. Big Y, proud to support WNPR. Faith here with a welcome toast. If you like to eat, drink, and be merry, you're in the right place. It was Betty Davis who said, "I was always eager to salt a good stew. The trouble was that I was expected to supply the meat and potatoes as well." Betty Davis. Please feel free to consume this show podcast in 1 bite, 2 bites, or oops, I ate the whole thing. I'm Faith Middleton. It's great to have you joining the party on the Food Schmooze on WNPR. My food buddies are here. Senior contributor Christopher Prosperi of Metro Beast Restaurant in Simsbury, Connecticut. Contributor Alex Province. You can get the podcast of our show so you won't miss a drop. Listen on your schedule. Sign up once and we'll send it to you every week. Go to foodschmooze.org. I am starting with Chris Prosperi because he has come up with what I think is the most amazing chicken slow cooker recipe ever, because it is the crazy simplest thing. It's impossible that this can work, and here it is, and the result is unbelievable, moist and velvety. Wait until you hear this. I was so excited. All right, Chris, first of all, thank you for sharing this.
Well, I am the crock pot, slow cooker kind of guy. They come up with new ones.
Intervention.
No, they come up with new ones all the time.
And he uses them as drawers in his house. Socks in
You know
one.
what? I will say I had to build a separate shelving unit because they are kind of bulky.
All right, here's what I want to tell you, that we have on the website right now this recipe. So if you want to just race there, you can. Or at any point, you can listen to this show as a podcast or share it with somebody as a podcast anytime you want. So just go to foodschmooze.org, SCHMOOZE, SCH. If you get that far, it'll come up. Okay, here we go. So listen to these ingredients, because essentially we're going to make a raft in the bottom of a slow cooker with some chopped vegetables, the most basic ones.
Yep.
And then sit a chicken on top of that, put the lid on and cook it.
Yeah, and I think everyone gets a little freaked out like it can't happen because we're used to using a slow cooker as a pot where you braise something in. So it's always got this good amount of liquid that stuff sits in. But if you look at it and see how it works, you can use this as like a low temperature oven. Basically cooking the chicken at its set temperature, which is around 180 degrees.
Nothing is easier than this. If you have said to yourself, but I'm too busy in the morning to even put things in a slow cooker, this is the answer. And here's how it works. You chop up 1 onion, 1 carrot, and you chop up 2 pieces of celery. And then you just throw those chopped pieces in the bottom of a slow cooker. Take a chicken out of its bag. Take that little crazy gizzard bag out of the inside.
Don't forget that.
Put salt and pepper on it.
Simple.
And I suppose you could throw a lemon in the cavity if you want.
Whatever at that point, whatever you usually do for a roasted chicken is fine.
Just throw it in there. But anyway, you can just simply take that chicken with salt and pepper and sit it in the slow cooker. It's supposed to say in 6 or an 8 quart slow cooker.
Yeah, the larger ones are better because you want it to fit in there where the lid sort of fits.
But it can be snug.
Yeah,
okay.
It can be nice and tight in there. But
you want the lid to close.
The lid has to close because remember, we're not using this as a pot for simmering now. We're using this as an oven. So the lid has to be on there good.
So again, onion, carrot, and celery chopped up, thrown in the bottom. Chicken, salt, and pepper. Put it in the slow cooker, sitting on the bed. No liquid.
No, nothing. Its liquid will come because the chicken has liquid in it.
That
when you cook
is it.
It will come out.
You put the cover on. You make sure the cover is really in place. Then you set your slow cooker on low for 8 hours.
So basically when you leave the house in the morning and when you come home at night, your chicken dinner is done.
If you're someone who loves brown skin, Chris came up with a way to help you. But otherwise, if you're not a brown skin lover, what happens to the skin is just
the skin
creepy.
is just, it's got that sort of like gray kind of look. Not pretty, but, and this is what I found, most people don't eat the skin. So the skin you just take off.
And it's
and it's
what?
soft
and velvety.
And moist.
Why is it moist with no liquid in there?
Because you're cooking this at such a low temperature, the liquid doesn't come out of the bird. The moisture gets pulled out of the bird when you're cooking at higher temperatures. So you lose a lot of that moisture. But cooking it in the slow temperature, that moisture stays in the meat of the chicken.
Wow.
And you can eat the chicken just like that, like you would a chicken dinner. Or, oh my gosh, you can even get it to the point where it shreds.
Or you just
and you put it in a sandwich.
Or enchiladas.
Enchiladas.
You could do anything with it. Or just slice it
put it on with some mashed potatoes. Yeah.
Velvety thing. Okay, now here's what to do if you want to have crispy skin, because some people eat the crispy skin. I do half the time, and half the time I'm watching it. But I do half the time, and so I would probably do this. Chris, what do? You take the chicken out.
I let it cool a little bit so you can touch it. So lift it out.
Skin on.
Leave the skin on. Lift it out very carefully.
With your hands? With a paper towel?
I use a spoon where you sort of put it in the cavity and then very carefully with another pair of tongs lift it out onto a cutting board.
Okay.
And then let, some juices will come out of it. Just let it sit there for a little while just so it gets to be less hot. And then all you have to do with a knife is just very carefully cut it in half from top to bottom. And then vertically, you'll get two halves. You take those two halves, skin side up on a little cookie sheet with a rim, and then you put it under the broiler.
And you must watch it while it's under the broiler.
Oh, of course. It's not so much how fast your broiler is. It depends on how high your top shelf is from the element.
So I say stand there.
Yeah, so stand there, door open.
It's gonna crisp.
If you've ever broiled, it goes fast.
The door open, a little crack.
and then
watch it.
Yeah.
Just keep peeking.
A minute, maybe 2 minutes.
And the skin becomes crispy.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe cut it in half first when it's uncooked.
Oh, you could do that too. Sure. And then
but it's going to cut easier.
Yeah,
right?
It just cuts so easy when
it does. Okay.
Yeah, because it's just about. You've cooked this to the point where the meat's just falling.
Or if you use a butcher, you could say to the butcher, I would like my chicken cut in half.
Yeah,
and there you
totally.
go. And then you would just stack one piece on top.
But you know what? I keep saying this. I watch people eat chicken all the time. 90% of the people don't eat the skin anyway, so just take the skin off.
This is so amazing. Now, if you want to fool with this, you can. I might throw a lemon in the cavity, and a piece of garlic, just because that's fun, or a sprig of rosemary.
Potatoes in the bottom, and you could mash those with the chicken fat.
But bear in mind, Chris says, well, a lot of people are going to want to just throw those chopped vegetables away at the bottom that you're using as a raft. Because all the chicken, the wonderful juice is down there, but so is all the fat. Mm-hmm. So if you're concerned about that kind of thing, out they go. If you're not concerned about that kind of thing, and are you a marathon runner? I don't know.
If you put a raft of potatoes, and then you mash the potatoes with the schmaltz, which is a fancy way of saying chicken fat. Little sea salt in there. Oh, my God. Then you have the best
You could use
chicken.
a fat separator if you wanted.
Yeah, and you know what? I didn't say this in the recipe, but you can also, that juice that settles in there, you can defat that and make a simple gravy. Again, it doesn't come out like if you roast it in the pan, because you don't get those brown bits and goodness that when you roast it in the oven, but you still have a nice broth at the bottom of that you could defat and make into a gravy.
This is so amazing. Yeah. So it's on the site. We tell you, kind of roughly the size of a chicken to get, how many onions, how many carrots, how many pieces of celery. Honestly, on the way home from work, you could just bring this and chop this up even the night before and just throw it in the morning. And in 8 hours when you come home from work,
you got cooked chicken.
It's done.
And, like I said,
it's done.
The house smells good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Chris.
Do I love the slow cooker?
Fantastic. I'm sorry, but that is just fantastic.
I just sometimes look at the shelf of slow cookers and think, what can I put in there next? And this is the thing. Think about this. If you're one of those people like I am and you like to stop on your way home from work and pick up a rotisserie chicken, and, sometimes they're okay, but sometimes they're not the best chicken ever. This is a way you get the same result. You still get that whole chicken, and it's done when you get home from work, and you don't even have to stop.
Fantastic. Okay, here, wanted to let you know that this is a first. Please join me and my food buddies here for my Food Schmooze signature event, a new chocolate-inspired champagne dinner dance, February 11th. Some of the region's most talented and innovative chefs have been asked to use chocolate to enhance savory and sweet dishes. The courses are a surprise. We have wines to match from Frederick Wildman & Sons' high-quality portfolio. And as to savory, mouth-watering dishes, you're thinking, what a touch of dark chocolate can lift a dish into the stratosphere. I mean, picture a cocoa-dusted steak. That dark powder produces an amazing char and flavor. Chocolate desserts, they don't need explanation, and they are fabulous at our dinner. I can promise you that. Plus, our senior cocktail contributor, Anthony DeSario, has created a signature chocolate-inspired opening cocktail for this event only. Music for those who like to dance from the Alex Nakimovsky Band and singers. Dress is festive. We leave it up to you. Surprise someone for Valentine's Day or let them know. Bring a relative or a friend. This event sells out every time, but this one, chocolate-inspired, look out.
That's a great idea.
Ticket address coming up now. Our new chocolate-inspired champagne dinner dance, February 11th, starts at 6 at the beautiful River House at Goodspeed Station in Haddam, Connecticut. Contributing chefs include Manuel Romero of Olia, Jason Sobosinski of Casius, Matthew Buffard of Chamard Winery and Bistro, Prasad Chernubala of Oaxaca and Tali, and David Caudill of Salute. Thank you to all of you, and that list of chefs and cocktail makers is growing. Thanks to our sponsor, Yukon Health's Pat and Jim Calhoun Cardiology Center, with support from the River House at Goodspeed Station, Power Station Events, and Frederick Wildman & Sons Wine Portfolio. I hope you will join us. We'll all be there to meet you and enjoy this first ever Food Schmooze chocolate-inspired dinner with you. The chefs are excited, so are we. To reserve your tickets, go online for information to WNPR Heart to Heart. .org. WNPR, don't forget that part, hearttoheart.org. Okay, who uses cutting boards? And I mean when you're doing a roast or a turkey or any kind of big piece of ham, because I use the little one next to the sink constantly. But I also have this great wood cutting board, and I love it because it has a little trough around the outside
I have that
edge,
same one.
and it has a little spout on one side where the gravy, and it's slightly tilted on the legs, so the gravy goes down into the spout, and it comes with this wooden bowl.
That's too cool.
And you slip it, that fits under the edge of the cutting board, and all the gravy goes into the bowl, and then you put it in your, the pan where you're making gravy.
Awesome.
Oh, my goodness. I love this thing. It was a gift.
That's a great gift.
So on the other side of this break, though, I want to tell you what one of our food magazines did. They decided to test all the cutting boards. How much liquid did they hold in the trough? Did the spout work? They tested them all, and we're going to tell you what the winner is. More mouthwatering conversation and fun ahead on the Faith Middleton Food Schmooze. I hope you will make a charitable contribution to feed the hungry. We're online now at foodschmooze.org. We'll be right back.
You can have the fourth position on my list. I must admit your kisses would be missed. But how in the world could I exist without tacos, tostadas, tortillas, tomatoes, can't stand meat, keep away from potatoes, hot tamales, cold tamales, new tamales, old tamales. Just give me tacos, enchiladas, and beans.
Okay, hope that first bite of the Food Schmooze felt like a hot biscuit with butter coming your way. Feel free to tell your food-loving friends worldwide they can enjoy the show and our online site at foodschmooze.org. Here's your second bite.
Beans and cornbread. Beans and cornbread. Beans and cornbread. Beans and cornbread had a fight. Beans knocked cornbread out of sight. Cornbread said, now that's all right. Meet me on the corner tomorrow night. I'll be ready. I'll be ready tomorrow night. I'll be ready. I'll be ready tomorrow night. I'll be ready. I'll be ready tomorrow night. That's what Beans said to cornbread.
We have a free podcast for you, meaning you'll never miss a drop of pleasure. Just sign up for it once at our site, and we'll automatically send you our show every week so you can listen on your schedule. also discover the delicious food, wine, events, and cocktails we feature. We love talking with you, so stop by often and say hi. We're always online at foodschmooze.org. Thanks to our talented crew, senior contributor Chris Prosperi of Metro Beast Restaurant in Simsbury, Connecticut, contributor Alex Province, and of course we thank you first and foremost for listening. As promised, the cutting board. If you have a birthday present to give, or maybe even for that Valentine's present, if you've got somebody who wants a cutting board, and it really does make a difference in terms of, it's hard to use the small ones when you're cutting a roast of some kind. So, and the juice just spills off onto the kitchen counter. So we love cutting boards that have a little trough along the outside, as I mentioned, that are the appropriate size for the meat and also not too heavy, because there is nothing worse than carrying a cutting board that is already, I mean, some of them are 7 to 10 pounds.
Or more, the big ones, the butcher block ones.
By themselves.
Yeah.
And you try and carry a giant ham, or it's impossible. So here's what they did at Cooks Illustrated. They decided to give a whole bunch of cutting boards to the panel and rate them all. And they tested, which trough on the outside holds the most liquid. Does the one with the little pouring spout work? And so they went through a whole bunch of them. And so I'm just going to cut to the chase, thank you, Cooks Illustrated, and tell you that J.K. Adams Maple Reversible Carving Board. I like the idea that it's reversible. And by the way, Adams also makes, this is about, I think, around $70. And Adams also makes one with a pour spout in the corner. And they liked that almost as much, but they felt the one without the pouring spout, something about the trough, they liked that one better. So there you go. I like the pouring spout myself. But anyway, J.K. Adams Maple Reversible Carving Board. All right, you want to do one more comfort food. If you're a comfort food nut, I couldn't resist. Here is this whole wheat spaghetti with broccoli rabe pesto. Let me say the ingredients to you. Some people, when you say whole wheat spaghetti, are going to say, oh, I don't know. But with this pesto, so right, Chris, so
I
hearty.
love the idea of pestos.
So here you go. It is broccoli rabe that you blanch, whole almonds that you just buzz up with some garlic in a food processor or in your blender, and some chopped Kalamata olives, some grated Parmesan cheese, a little tiny bit of extra virgin olive oil, and whole wheat spaghetti, which you can get in any supermarket or food store. And really a pot of water to just throw the broccoli rabe into, the fresh broccoli rabe. It blanches in just a couple of minutes, turns bright green, and then you put it in the strainer and spread it out on a cooling rack, or just let it come to room temperature. It takes about 15 minutes. Put your almonds in a baking sheet, roast them in the oven for about 5 minutes or so. Let those cool and chop that broccoli rabe. And in a food processor, you put a little bit of the cooking water and the chopped almonds and the garlic and just buzz it. And that gets really into a beautiful paste, just like pesto does. And then you add in your broccoli rabe and the olives and the Parmesan. And then while that food processor is still running, you pour in that little bit of olive oil. You're going to scrape down the sides. You do this for about a minute. And it's going to be like a bright green paste, the way that basil pesto is. And then you put your pasta in.
And you can make that ahead of time, too, and have lots of extra to
have it
spread
cold
on
in the
toast.
summer.
So delicious.
And whole wheat pasta is actually very good.
And that's from last year's cookbook, Downtown Italian. And so it features, we're talking about the villages, in other words, the village and that means West Village and East Village. But let me tell you something about downtown the village in New York. It is so hot there now that these twin neighborhoods, you're going to think I'm kidding when I say this, but people uptown, in other words, on the Upper East Side, and people have money to burn, to be fair, these people are buying apartments in the village, especially in the West Village and the East Village, because it is so exotic and fun and filled with now the best restaurants and such a hot scene that they are buying pied-à-terre in the downtown area in the villages, and they go on the weekends on to this exotic destination. You think I am kidding, but I'm not kidding.
The cab ride.
Yeah. Look out the window, hon.
Honestly.
Look at those people.
I don't want to carry a toothbrush.
My real estate pals in New York are explaining this. Honestly, this is really... So anyway, the 3 restaurant people featured in the book, executive chef Gabriel Thompson, pastry chef Catherine Thompson, and Joe Campanale, and they all work in the following restaurants: Delanima, L'Artusi, Anfora, and L'Apiccio. The recipes are, when the restaurant book comes out, often these are quite chefy, and so there are many things and ingredients that we might be a bit of a struggle for us to find. But this recipe, this broccoli rub, anybody can make, and it's one of the ones that's so delicious, and the publisher said so too. So, Alex, you've been making a lot of martinis lately, and you've gone for the classic.
I just spent a week in Oregon in a cabin up in Bend in the middle of nowhere, and the most exotic thing we could find was a bottle of vodka. But nothing really beats an icy cold martini if you just take a shaker and you shake the heck out of it.
Walk us through it. What's the classic way to do it, the way you do it?
There's probably lots of different ways, but this is what we make daily. So you take a Boston shaker. It's just that stainless steel.
I'm laughing at daily. Okay, go ahead.
Never more than 2 a day.
Never more than daily.
Never more than daily. That's the way I do it.
The Boston shaker is that shiny metal thing that comes in 2 parts. So you fill one of the pieces with ice, and then you just pour in, depends what size martini glass you have. But
or if you're making for 1 or 2.
Yeah, so we make it
4.
for 2. So add, say 6 shots of good vodka. And when you make a martini, you need good vodka. So, there's lots of great brands out there. But pour in your 6 shots. You can do a little splash of dry vermouth, not sweet, dark vermouth, but like the dry white stuff. And you don't have to add this either. You probably would hardly taste it.
Some people are so particular about that, they put it in a spray bottle and spray it on the top of the martini.
Or you can rinse your glass out with it.
That's a great idea, Alex.
The thing is, though, if you go to a bar and you get a martini, if you ask the bartender, most times they're not using vermouth at all. So... Now, we like a dirty martini, so you need a jar of really good olives.
Such as? Do you mean not supermarket olives?
Supermarket ones work.
Fine,
yeah.
okay.
But,
I like the big Queen
Well, what are the bad
ones.
olives? Just don't get olives in a can?
Not in a can. Not in a can, and then you can get them filled
Unless
with
they're from Spain.
Yeah, those are different, but then I wouldn't put them in a martini.
Okay, go ahead.
So just a nice-looking olive that you'd want in your drink.
Oh, you can get them with almonds. You can get them with blue cheese.
Right. Blue cheese is good, but don't shake it.
With
if
the
you're
blue
gonna,
cheese. Yeah.
You don't put it in the shaker. You'll end up with
So a jar
of
supermarket olives is fine.
Sure, that's great. So first, if you really want to make a great martini, take your martini glass, fill it with ice cubes and water while you're making your drink. And this is going to chill down your martini glass. The secret to this is making it as cold as possible.
Or in the morning, you could just throw your martini glasses in the freezer. You just rinse them first and then put them in the freezer.
Yeah.
They get kind of a glaze. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, you have your martini shaker, ice cubes, vodka. You can pour a tiny little bit of that olive juice into your martini shaker.
Dirty, right?
That's what makes
How much do you pour in?
Well,
Depends on how dirty you want it.
The more you put in, the dirtier it gets. And this is where we always laugh when we go to restaurants, because Matt and I will always order martinis. He likes his slightly dirty than mine. So when when the server's asking, Matt will order like a slightly dirty martini. And I'll say, and I want mine slightly less dirty than his. And just by saying that, it makes his dirtier. And Matt will always kick me under the table and be like, stop saying that.
Because his is too dirty.
Yeah, because then his will come back dirty and mine will be perfect. But, so now... in your shaker, you have all the ingredients. You're going to shake until the outside becomes frosty cold, and then you're going to get tiny little ice crystals, little diamonds inside.
My waitstaff says 100 shakes.
That makes your bar one of the best ever, as far as I'm concerned.
You can ice skate on top of the martini.
People, the bar is such a seat of action in places that they'll do, maybe 10 shakes and call it a day. It's not enough. If I see that, my heart sinks a little. Yep. So I will say to the waiter, please tell the bartender, I want this super cold, as many shakes as possible. And, not to be a persnickety type, but just because it's just so much better. And then I order ice on the side.
If it's not cold enough, it tastes like rubbing alcohol.
I like those. I love those little ice crystals. It's part of the enjoyment.
Yeah. And then you strain it out.
Clean out your glass. If your glass had water and ice cubes in it, dump it in, and now garnish it with 2 or 3 olives. It's perfect.
Alex Province at home was searching for something comfort foody, and he came up with these short ribs with Zinfandel. And Zinfandel has, a lot of fruit in it. It's not sweet. It has structure, especially to go against beef. But it's beautiful to have short ribs of beef against Zinfandel wine.
Yeah, and Zinfandel is very, very American. So it's drinking something that we have heritage, like the Italian immigrants that planted Zinfandel in California in the late 1800s. A lot of those vines are even still alive today, so it's pretty historic and cool to support. Okay, so go to the grocery store, find short ribs. They always look great. They're really inexpensive. Get your Dutch oven, put some olive oil in.
When you say Dutch oven,
I use like the Le Creuset, but you can use something that's heavy bottomed. The heavier the Dutch oven is, or the stock pot, the less likely it's going to scorch.
Iron. Go ahead.
And that works great, actually. So after you heat up the oil, you're going to salt and pepper the short ribs. You're going to brown them on all sides, just to give some flavor.
Can I jump in right here
Sure.
and say, here's a mistake that I have often made. When I am browning the short ribs, in my interest of browning, I can have the heat a little bit too high or keep them on there a little bit too long, and I can end up burning them. What happens is you get a slightly burned flavor all the way through the recipe, and when you're eating them, sometimes I can't even tell, I don't even notice, but someone who really knows food will say, a little burn on these short ribs. So you want them browned, but that doesn't mean burned.
Real quick tip, though. You know what I've been doing lately? And it's real simple, is I turn on my gas grill. Like if you're doing a decent-sized batch of these, I'll turn on my gas grill for 5-10 minutes. And instead of searing them in a pan, I'll just get the grill really hot, and I'll just mark them on the grill.
So, Chris, I put my grill away. So what would you tell me as a way to not burn my short ribs when I'm browning them? I now know because it was, a cooking school teacher said to me, Faith, you've got a little tiny bit of burned taste in here. So I now watch them like a hawk. But what's a good tip?
Another good tip would be to start them on the stovetop, right? So you have your pan hot, put the short rib in there, and then if you have a nice heavy pot like he's talking about,
cast iron, maybe?
Put it in the oven at whatever your temperature, 350, 400 degrees, and then every once in a while just pull out the rack and turn them in there, because we burn things because we don't keep the temperature on our stoves at a nice medium heat.
So that way
we get it too hot.
It's circulating.
And you're going to get the searing because, especially in cast iron, that heat's on the bottom of the pan.
We've already made this sound so complicated, but really, you got these short ribs from the supermarket.
You sear them up.
And you just sear them up.
All right,
you're very lucky.
So after you burn them, what do? You set them aside.
After you brown them, put them aside.
You set them aside.
In the gorgeous pan now, you have all these, it looks gorgeous and
perfectly
seasoned.
browned.
Throw in some onions, some garlic, some carrots, some celery, season it with salt and pepper, saute it for a few minutes, let go transparent, try to scrape off all the brown bits. And then you're going to add a little bit of tomato paste, which actually helps with the caramelization later.
Sure, yeah.
You can add a little bit of flour that you sort of want to cook for a few minutes.
Or cornstarch if you're a gluten-free person.
I never use cornstarch. I should try.
You know what? Chris and I do not understand why flour is used so predominantly
over cornstarch,
when you could use cornstarch, or you could go to an Asian market and get chestnut powder. In any case, cornstarch is widely available.
See, but cornstarch is a different application. I think that's why you're looking to get some flavor out of this flour, because you're going to cook that flour to sort of make a roux, where cornstarch you would add after, right?
But
you add cornstarch at the end, flour at the beginning. You know what? Basically, if you're going to do the cornstarch, I just like finishing it with a little butter.
But cornstarch, I want to point out, is neutral in flavor.
No taste.
Really, flour is sort of that way too. But if you don't want wheat in your diet...
And cornstarch is so much easier to use.
I bet you don't have to use cornstarch or flour, and I bet it would still work.
I use a trick that someone taught me about using cornmeal to thicken things. And then it adds a little texture, or grits. So you take that ground corn and you put it in there, and it thickens your dish, right? And it adds a little texture too.
But you can't coat your meat in corn.
No. You add it again once you get your
later when you're doing gravy.
No, before that, right when you get your liquid simmering, you put the cornmeal in there and it
Seriously?
cooks it. Yeah,
wow.
I do it in my chili every single time.
Yeah,
now.
chili, and you could use masa flour too.
Plus diabetics, flour is an issue. Okay, but anyway.
Continuing.
Does anyone mind if I put wine in this dish? May I dump a bottle of wine in?
The thing about wine...
Oh, you're good. We're not even going to...
Okay.
Keep going,
So
keep
let
going.
me
Don't
recap.
mind us.
No. Let me do...
Hey, Faith,
me
I
do
think
the-
we're backseat cooking here. No, don't do that. Do this.
Let me do the Reader's Digest version of this. So Alex very kindly took out either a cast iron skillet or a Dutch oven, as he calls it, and some oil in the pan. And he took short ribs from the supermarket or your butcher and browned them lightly on all sides until they're golden brown, not burned. And then he set them aside. And now in the same pot, he is sauteing onions and garlic and carrots and celery. And he added a little bit of tomato paste, which adds to the depth of the flavor and also adds to caramelization. You can either at this point add a tablespoon of flour to help thicken, or you can add cornstarch. Go ahead, Alex.
And now at this point, you can take a bottle of wine, 750.
Do you put the ribs back in at this point?
Yes. Tastes way better if you put the ribs back in.
You get this pot of gravy.
You get this dipping sauce that cooks for 3 hours.
We're not going to make
good.
it.
It can be a soup.
So,
All right, let's go. Let's
All
stay
right.
on
the ribs
target,
are added
people.
back to the Dutch oven.
You see why there is a food site called thefoodschmooze.org, because you can see the actual recipe. He puts the short ribs back in.
Thank you.
Yep. Then in goes a bottle of
A red wine.
Red wine. And you like a Zinfandel. In this case, you've used Ridge.
I didn't pour the ridge into the Dutch oven because it's so expensive and delicious. But you can get like a $10 like unoaked simple red wine. Go to your wine shop, ask for a $10 cooking wine.
You know, Julia Child used to say, use the same wine you're using in cooking as what you're drinking, because she was trying to get us not to use really crazy, expensive wine to cook with. But,
you don't want to
and
use garbage either. I mean, you want to use something that's wholesome and inexpensive, $8 to $10 bottle, unoaked red wine, dry. Dump it in, boil it, bring it up to a gentle boil, not crazy. Let it simmer, let it reduce a little. Now put the top on, put it in the oven for 2-3 hours. And at that point, the short ribs will just be falling off the bone. You can take them out, and then you can actually reduce the sauce that you have left over.
Just by putting it back on the stove, right?
Mm-hmm. Strain it if you want to get fancy.
And as it's simmering at a low temperature, it's starting to reduce itself, and it gets thicker and more concentrated in
sweeter.
flavor. This is something...
That's my favorite part right there.
Yeah,
so this is
it's
where
something that Chris does at his restaurant. It's
Sauce making
unbelievable.
is just...
Chris made us his short ribs from his restaurant. And it's the best short ribs I've ever had in my life.
I think all of us
but
said that.
so complicated.
But it's complicated.
It's
There's
complicated.
4 or 5 steps.
Alex is
and
making
days and-
these short ribs that Alex is
Veal
talking
stock.
about.
These are realistic short ribs. Yours had like 4 bottles of Barilla wine.
veal stock that was
Despite this
reduced for 2
discussion,
days.
these are makeable because we were just having fun with this. All right, stay with us here on The Food Schmooze. We're online at foodschmooze.org.
I am sitting in the morning at the diner on the corner. I am waiting at the counter for the man to pour the coffee, and he fills it only halfway. And before I even argue, he is looking out the window at somebody coming in.
One more mouth-watering bite of the Food Schmooze. Ready? Here's something great to know about. Sign up for the app called NPR One. Just download it from the iPhone App Store or your Android device. And once you do, you can set WNPR as your local station. Couldn't be easier. Download the free app NPR One and start listening. Let's party on. More Food Schmooze.
I like to dance, I like to sing, I like to do my Cajun thing, but what I like the best is Mama's cooking more than all the rest. Mama's cooking starts out high, she puts crawfish in
This is the Food Schmooze Party, offering the richness of life and coming to you in Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and New York, including Westchester County, the East End of Long Island, and the Hamptons. The senior producer is Robin Doyen Aiken. And to hear the show on WNPR, it airs Thursdays at 3 and Saturdays at noon. Podcasts and our curated recommendations are always online at foodschmooze.org. You can talk with us on Facebook, too. Search Faith Middleton. Okay, we're heading into the height of comfort food season. And here's what happened when we asked you, our audience, to tell us about your favorite comfort foods. Chris Prosperi started us off. He began the conversation for us, describing his favorite mac and cheese. And we have that recipe posted now at foodschmooze.org.
The first thing, I use egg noodles in this one.
Would you do these in advance?
Oh, my gosh. I totally do these in advance. And I love this recipe because it's different. It's not your normal mac and cheese. But you never see macaroni and cheese used with egg noodles. And I don't know. I just love the texture. They're softer.
Exactly.
Yeah, mushier.
And there's more protein in egg noodles
Yeah,
because they use egg yolks in those noodles. And so I like that for the body, the way it processes it.
Cook the egg noodles first in boiling salted water, just like you would cook anything. I like them soft, so I cook them a little extra. I don't know. With mac and cheese, I love soft noodles. So you strain those, set those
less
aside.
Work. You don't have to chew it as much.
That's probably it. All right, so then there's two other steps. The first one is to make the caramelized onions. So I take a couple onions, slice them thin, a hot pan, add a little bit of oil, and caramelize the onions somewhere around 10, 12, 15 minutes. You just keep stirring over a medium heat until they get nice and golden. It's a little, trick you have to learn to caramelize onions, but once you got it, you got it. Then, again, that can be done ahead of time.
You're just waiting for the onions to get brown.
Yeah, lightly golden brown.
Yeah,
and they sort of get soft and squishy again. And that's the thing about comfort
And they
food.
reduce to nothing.
Oh, yeah.
By the way, can I jump in?
Yeah.
Here is a tip. If you want a way to make caramelized onions and not sweat it, you just throw them into a slow cooker.
Oh, good idea.
And then when they're done,
you can just walk away.
You can walk away. A, B. When they're done, you can put them in Ziploc bags.
Oh, and freeze them.
Plastic bags, and freeze them and pull out servings of caramelized onions whenever you want them.
I have a friend that does that with a 5-pound bag of onions. So they
So
always have.
close.
Okay, so you have your onions.
So
all right, and then we're
onions.
gonna take 1 head of cauliflower, chop it up into bite-sized pieces. I toss it with a little oil, a little bit of salt, and roast it in the oven at 400 degrees for about 8 minutes until they get nice and dark. Caramelized. They get a little crunchy, a little toasted. Set that aside.
So these are the things I can do ahead.
Totally. That can be done ahead of time.
Okay.
And then my sauce is very simple. I take half a cup of white wine, put it in a pan, reduce it by half, add 2 cups of milk, bring the 2 cups of milk up to a simmer, and then I thicken it. Cornstarch and water mixed equal parts. So 2 tablespoons of cornstarch, 2 tablespoons of cold water. You mix it together with your finger in a little bowl. And then while the milk is simmering, you take a whisk and you pour this in. Done. Take it off the stove. And then you take all those things, onions, cauliflower, noodles, that sauce, and a half a cup of Parmesan cheese, mix it all together, put it in a baking dish, put it in the oven, 400 degrees. I like it where the top gets crispy, so you leave it in for 12 minutes. But if you like it still soft, just warm it up.
You could put a little panko on the top.
Oh, my gosh, you could put panko on top, whatever.
Breadcrumbs, whatever you want. So this is on our website right now. If you can't write this down, of course you can, or memorize every single thing that we're
It's fancy
saying.
mac and cheese. But you know what? If you just took that sauce, the cheese, and the noodles, you'd still be golden.
It was so delicious. So we have Sarah on the line. By the way, that recipe for the mac and cheese with cauliflower and caramelized onions is at foodschmooze.org. Go ahead, Sarah.
My comfort food is homemade chicken noodle soup.
Oh, that's a good one.
Classic.
What I like to do is do a roaster chicken one night, maybe a Sunday night dinner, save it, leave it in the crock pot like all day Monday or all day Tuesday with a little onion, celery, carrots, leave it all day, get the chicken stock from that, pull all the little pieces off of the bone, and make a nice homemade healthy chicken noodle soup.
That sounds good. Do you make the traditional soup, or do you add some snazzy ingredients? Some people will add lemon, some people will add Parmesan cheese, Asian ingredients. How do you do yours?
I do nothing fancy.
Yeah, you
Nothing
just
different.
classic.
Usually it's just noodles and fresh carrots and I get a nice loaf of Italian bread, warm it up.
When are you inviting us over?
Yeah, really. We've got to have a truck that delivers this kind of soup to your door. This is it. And it's Sarah.
I love the idea of doing the crock pot, doing the chicken bone and the whole thing in the crock pot the next day.
Sarah, thank you.
To make my life easier.
Thank you for calling in.
Thank you.
So I'm with Chris Prosperi and Alex Province. Chris, thank you for that recipe. And Alex, what is your comfort food?
I like the standard comfort food, beef bourguignon, mac and cheese, meatloaf. But this actually reminds me of my grandmother when I'd go visit her in Spain. And she would, a classic Spanish dinner, they eat dinners really late. Their main dinner is lunchtime. But for dinner, she makes these beautiful French fries that are fried in olive oil really slowly so they absorb this gorgeous olive oil. And they fry beautiful eggs just to the point where the egg yolks are still runny. And those eggs go on top of this pile of French fries. Whoa. And that with this simple but great bread. You dip the French fries into the yolk of the egg, and everything is
Forget ketchup.
Oh my gosh! So to me, so it's not your standard comfort food, but it is so delicious.
Let's go over this again.
French fries and
now,
eggs.
Where is she doing? In one skillet, she's roasting the potatoes in beautiful olive oil.
So,
and are they pre-cooked?
So that's the thing. My grandmother, and it seems like Spaniards, cook French fries sort of slowly in this olive oil, so it's not crisping up. It's more sort of like
absorbing,
and their olive oil is so good that you want to
This is like
eat
potato
the olive oil.
risotto.
Yeah.
Yes, it's really, you have to use a really good olive oil for something like that.
And so then they would
what
take
is it, with a lid on?
Yeah, a thick bottom pan, cover the French fries in olive oil. So it's almost, it's almost like a confit.
Yeah, poaching potatoes in olive oil.
Crazy.
And then,
I'm with you.
And they're cooking for 20 minutes or so,
slow.
and slowly cooking and slowly browning, and they'll take a slotted spoon and put it on a plate. And then in another saute pan, and most of these grandmothers have a designated saute pan that always has olive oil in it, they'll fry an egg, and they'll sort of spoon the fat over the top just so that the egg white cooks. But before it solidifies, the yolk solidifies, she takes it out and slides it onto the French fries. So then it's just like this pile of beautiful French fries, these soft eggs on top.
Give me a fork.
All right, we've got Karen. Welcome to the show. What's your comfort food, Karen?
Well, after the holidays, you all were reminding me of this soup I like to make where I take like a can of tomatoes, like whole tomatoes or crushed tomatoes, but some good quality like preserved tomatoes. And I throw them in the oven and, roast them at like 375 or even higher until they completely, roast and most of the liquid is gone from them. And in there with that, I roast garlic and maybe carrots and celery and onion. And if you roast it long enough, you'll lose that canny taste from the tomatoes or that, that sense. And they'll start to taste just like great roasted tomatoes if they're good ones. And then you can make your own, like, homemade tomato soup that way with, like, either cream, if you do cream, or I use coconut milk.
Oh,
that sounds wonderful.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I have a friend
and lots of garlic, lots of roasted garlic in there. And then you could have it with some crusty bread. But if you're like me and you want to lose a little weight in January,
like me, too.
Then, more celery and more onion and definitely lots of roasted garlic. Maybe herbs, and you could put giant croutons on it with cheese, or you could just, eat it real simple. But the cream helps it, too, the heavy cream or light cream, or for me, coconut milk, because you won't really taste the coconut in there.
Yeah, exactly. And if you need to, you can use a low-fat coconut milk.
Right.
Karen, thank you so much for your call.
Yeah. Happy New Year.
Yeah, you
Happy
too.
New Year.
Thank you so much. Okay, let's go. We're doing comfort foods, as you know, and I wanted to get to John. Hi, John. What's your comfort food?
My favorite thing to make is shrimp risotto with shaved Parmesan cheese on top and a little bit of truffle oil.
Oh, that sounds so good. That's really good.
The key, though, is to have a good stock, a fish stock. And I've gotten pretty good at finding some pretty good canned fish stock with making the risotto that really helps in the flavor.
John, that sounds great. And may I add an idea for you? This is something that I do. When I'm making shrimp, I will boil it for just, a flash. I just dip it in there, essentially. Then I take it out. This is shrimp in the shell. I take it out and I peel the shells off, and I throw those shells into a bag. And then I throw that bag in the freezer. And so whenever I'm making anything, I will use either the liquid from the cooking shells, or when I'm boiling rice or doing whatever I'm doing, I'll throw those shells in and then drain them out, and you have an instant real stock. And I was thinking, anytime you make shrimp, you could do that, and you'd have it sitting in your freezer.
Actually, I do that, but I have a lot of risotto so much that I don't have enough.
You don't have enough time. Well, I like your idea just the way it is. Thank you so much, John.
Thank you.
All right.
You can save your lobster shells, too. Every time we eat lobster, we always save the shells and makes a great stock.
For some reason, I never think to do that, and of course you're right. That's a great idea. You can have the stock, not just the shells sitting there, because you can boil the shells in some water and then just strain the shells out and put it in a Ziploc bag or a couple of them so you have a couple different servings and throw that in the freezer. All right, Ann Faith Middleton with Alex and Chris. Welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you?
Great, thanks. Good to have you on.
My all-time comfort food is homemade pasta with turkey meatballs and a red sauce.
Turkey meatballs. Now, how do you make your turkey meatballs?
You soak leftover bread, so it doesn't matter, a few days old. You soak that in water, then you drain it and you mush it up and you put it in with the turkey. You saute some onions. You put that in with the turkey meat and you put Parmesan cheese, salt and pepper, and then you put it in the sauce.
Yeah.
Wow.
Old school. I like that. With the softened bread. I remember that from my mom doing it.
So
it makes it more moist, because turkey can be kind of dry. So if you use breadcrumbs, it's almost like a lead ball. So
now let's take care of our gluten-free friends. So with meatballs, which often have bread in them, of course, this is a bit of a problem, a serious problem for people who have an allergy to gluten. Some people have said to me that some of the gluten-free breads don't do well. They kind of melt.
No, but they have that gluten-free breadcrumbs.
Yes.
And if you take those and you soak them in a little milk, you could do the same thing.
Yep.
So
I've done that before.
That's from a company in Connecticut called Aleas, Aleias, Aleas, and they make such good gluten-free products. So you'll see them in
really good.
major supermarkets. But that's a great idea, Ann, about soaking it in breadcrumbs in milk.
Yeah.
Love that you did that. And then do you make your own sauce or do you use a jarred sauce?
We make our own sauce and we make our own homemade pasta, too.
Oh, wow.
My grandfather did it when we were younger. And then my mother did it, who's Irish, but she still did it. She learned from my grandfather. So every Sunday was pasta and sauce. So
It's very cool.
Wow, that sounds great. We want to come over to your house, too. Thank you very much. Glad you called. Okay.
Bye-bye.
We're talking about comfort food here on the show. Alex Province, do you have another one?
Yeah, sure. I do like what Jacques Pepin used to do, save all the my cheese scraps in my cheese drawer, and then when it's time to make mac and cheese, and these are like the ugly pieces with the rind. You cut the rind off, and you can do blue cheese and manchego, Parmesan, all that stuff that accumulates, and then I sort of melt it and make a bechamel and combine it all with a little bit of Dijon mustard, the cooked pasta, and then it goes into the oven. But it gives, the more cheese and the more exotic the cheese, the more
Funkier,
complex and funky it gets.
So I think that is a fantastic idea. Now, if you want a place to keep your cheese rinds, some people will just freeze them. But if you want a place to keep your cheese rinds, I remember that Brian at Darien Cheese in Connecticut said, you can make your own cheese cave, like he said I have in the store, by wrapping your cheese in parchment or wax paper and then putting it inside a Ziploc bag and keeping it in the refrigerator. He said that holds the moisture into the cheese, and that's all you need to do. So you can keep it stored that way in your refrigerator if you want. Alex, you said you carved that cheese off of the rind, and it didn't really matter what kind was what. You just were using up all the old cheese. Then you said quickly, and I made a bechamel sauce, and there you go. Some people hear the word bechamel and they freak out. So let's say, Chris, can you do a translation of what's the easy thing to do to make a sauce for you just did?
I like half and half, but you can do milk, and then all you do is bring that up to a simmer, thicken it with cornstarch again.
In a little pot?
And then it gets 1 bay leaf, and you can do a little onion powder. And that's it. Simple. Bring it to a simmer, and it's basically a thickened milk sauce.
So could you do milk, onion powder, and cornstarch?
Yeah, totally. I go back and forth between using half and half in milk. Like when I made it this morning, I used milk. But sometimes when you want a little more oomph, I go for half and half.
Comfort, a little more comfort.
The fat content, you mean?
Comfort. Well, you can
translate. You don't need to translate.
No, you can get fat-free. Fat-free heavy cream. Okay, go ahead, Mike. Welcome to the Food Schmooze, Mike.
Hi, Faith. Thanks for having me.
What's your comfort food, Mike?
My wife Julie and I on the weekends like to make home fries using leftover pulled pork. It's actually really good. I like a nice pulled pork during the week, and on a Saturday or a Sunday, we'll mix up with some potatoes, some sliced apples, some sliced onions that we caramelize, add some brown sugar and some cayenne pepper to it, toast in a little bit of oil, and it's just a really great way to start off the weekend.
I am starving listening to that. That sounds so terrific. So you make pulled pork using probably a pork butt?
We do, yeah, and then we'll put it in a slow cooker for the day usually, let it cook for about 6 or 7 hours, add some seasoning throughout it. For both the home fries and when we make it, you can either add your barbecue sauce while it's cooking or afterwards, and it works for both the home fries and the regular recipe.
Oh, and for me, you don't even have to have the barbecue sauce. I just those potatoes and that shredded pork, that sounds so, so good to me.
Satisfying.
Oh, Mike, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for your ideas on comfort foods. It was a lot of fun to be re-inspired for the coming winter months. The Food Schmooze is on Thursdays at 3 and 9 and Saturdays at noon. Sign up for the show podcast at foodschmooze.org so you can listen on your schedule. In New Haven, I'm Faith Middleton.
Everybody eats when they come to mind.